quality of your nervous system is like, that is the quality of your life, because that's how we view it. If you're always jacked up and anxious, life is going to feel jacked up and anxious. If your nervous system is calm and excited, life is going to feel calming and exciting. So how can we use our nervous system as an indication of when it's activated, there's something that we need to realign, and it doesn't need to be suppressed or shoved away or overworked, or we don't need to overeat or anything. Just make some decisions to get back into alignment.
Well, Samantha Skelly, welcome back to Passion, Love, Pursuit podcast. I was thinking back on the time we recorded, and as I mentioned you offline, it was in the first year. So a lot has changed since then. And I know on your end, things have changed on my end. And it's just so interesting when you return to somebody that you interviewed years ago, and then to bring them to today, and just to see the vast transformation, I guess. We're all in this journey through life, just learning and evolving. And it's just beautiful to see you again. So welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much for having me back. And it's just so wild that it's been that long. I feel like that was a year ago.
It's surreal, right? Time freaking flies. That's all I could say. So yeah. So when I first met you, of course, we talked about your specialty, which is breath work. And so of course, I want to start off by sharing with those listening how you got into breath work and why this has been the modality for you that has served you not only in your life, but those that you teach today.
A couple months ago, I was sitting down with my speaking coach, and we were working on the next keynote. And typically when I like craft a keynote, it's sort of like the keynote that I do for many years, or it's like the body of work that I do for many years. And my last like real keynote was on emotional eating and body image issues, which was my last company, Hungry for Happiness. And so I was like, okay, we're going to write a keynote on breathwork. So I go to his house, and we're sitting down, and I'm like so convinced. I'm like, this is what we're going to write on. And he's like, I don't think that that's your subject. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, breathwork is like the most amazing thing ever. That's all I do all day, every day. He's like, yeah, but why do you do that? Why breathwork? He's like, breathwork is the bridge. Breathwork is the tool. But what is it that you actually want? Like, what is the problem that you're actually solving? And I really got down to it. And he asked me like, why, like 20 times. And I really got to the root of the reason why I'm so obsessed with teaching breathwork is I love helping people feel alive. And when we feel alive and we have that aliveness, that life force pulsing through our veins moment by moment, day by day, and we know how to get ourselves into that place, we can truly set people free. And I really believe that pain is a mandatory part of the human experience, but suffering is optional. And so my mission is making emotional suffering optional through breath work and through, working on the body. And it's just been a dream come true. I love it so much. And it's been amazing.
I love that. How can we come more alive? And as we were talking about offline, I think it's really about returning home to ourselves. And we have learned today that through somatic practices and really tapping into our own body again, because I think we're so disconnected from who we truly are because we're running to the next thing or we're doing the next thing. And it's really, we're never embodied, if you want to say. So we do need to practice pausing and really returning home to ourselves. And so I love that you speak about the power in breath work. But if you could kind of explain to us, why is breath work so powerful in that way of returning home to ourselves?
Breath work gives the brain an ability to relax their survival strategies so that we can feel a deeper sense of our truth. So it allows the part of us that is constantly saying, don't do this or careful about that, or it's just like the fear activation, right? The survival strategies of trying to protect ourselves. Well, in our innate body's survival strategies in trying to protect ourselves, we disconnect ourselves from our truth, from our happiness, from our joy, from our love. And so as we're breathing, what's really going on there is we're relaxing those survival strategies, and we're allowing our awareness to drop from our mind back into our heart, so we can really feel the truth of who we are, because that energy doesn't live in the mind. We're not our labels, we're not our personalities, we're not our, the things that we call ourselves. Like, what we are is this beautiful spiritual energy that exists within us, but we can only really feel it and embody it when we get out of our minds and get into our bodies. And for so much of the world, we are so conditioned to overthink, overanalyze, think about it. Like, all of our energy is in the mind. So the bodies are completely numbed out. And then there's an overactivation of the mind energy, which oftentimes puts us into states of the sympathetic nervous system all the time, the fight or flight. And we're stressed out, and we're thinking, and we're worrying. And when we learn to charge up the body through breath work, we allow some of that energy to come from the mind into the body. And then we can actually make our decisions not through the lens of the mind, but through the awareness of the body. And that changes our perception and perspective of life, and allows us to make decisions that are more aligned with who we are. You and I were talking about bringing more feminine energy into business, right? Like, so often high achieving women have been groomed to operate as men. And so we, I know I definitely was in that camp for a long time of hustle, force, go, 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 go. And now the greatest asset that I have in my business is my intuition. I have to make 500 decisions a day. And if I was constantly thinking, and not really tuning in, most of those decisions would be the wrong decision. I would go too fast. I would make mistakes. I would operate from fear, because that's the mechanisms that are operating in the mind. But when I use my heart and my intuition to make decisions, those are the decisions that are always, the pay, the ROI on that, not just from a money perspective, but from a joy perspective, from a fulfillment perspective, from a collaborative perspective, is so much higher.
Ooh, so good. So much in there. So as I kind of touched on the power and the pause, and I feel like somatically, the practice of breath work is a form of pausing and really getting in tune and calming down the noise through this practice. But I would love people to understand the practice of breath work, because there's different types.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear, because I know there's multiple types, but is there more simplified version of the types?
Yeah, so for
Uses.
sure. Yeah, let me break it down. Yeah, as the breathwork industry is growing and expanding, there's different bodies of work. Oftentimes people think, oh, holotropic breathwork, that's a type. It's actually just like a brand of breathwork. So the way that we break it down at Pause Breathwork is we have basically two verticals of breathwork. We have breathwork for relaxation, and then we have breathwork for transformation. Breathwork for relaxation is the type of breathwork that you want to do when you are stressed out, when you're feeling anxious, when you need a reset. The breathwork that you do right before a meeting to get grounded. The breathwork you do when you wake up in the morning to clear away any anxiety if that maybe got kicked up in your sleep, or the type of breathwork you want to do right before you go to bed to make sure that you have a relaxing sleep. So it's breathwork that helps recalibrate the body, release anxiety and stress, and just get back to our place, like a place of balance. And then there's breathwork for transformation, which is longer breath work, more intense breath work. And we go outside of our conscious mind. So it's a type of breath work where you're doing it and you could be doing it for an hour, but it feels like 5 minutes, right? And that's where we lose a little bit of touch with reality. We want to be lying down. Oftentimes having it done with a facilitator is really important, and really allowing ourselves to go to those altered states of consciousness where there's a lot of transformation that occurs. We can process a lot of emotionality because we're outside of our survival strategies, and we're not connected to reality as much as we are with breathwork for relaxation. And so just depending on the individual's level of tolerance of where they kind of want to take their practice, what I often suggest is, if you're brand new to breathwork, start with 3 minutes. 3 minutes a day, breathing into the belly, up into the chest, out through the mouth, and just allowing that breath to move through the body, and then just relax and just notice, like, oh, here's, like, this is how I feel. And then maybe the week after you do 4 minutes, and you kind of gradually build up. My very first breathwork session was 3 hours long, and it was super, super, super intense. And I mean, there is a divine reason why that happened, because maybe I wouldn't be doing what I do now if I didn't have that much of a, impact, but it was definitely unnecessary.
Deep dive.
But yeah. So just depending on, your body, your system, like some energy systems, if someone has a lot of anxiety already, doing a really quick and fast breathwork session is not going to be great for them. If you have a lot of anxiety, you want to have deep in the breath, like, and let the exhale just fall in your mouth and just go really deep and really slow so we can begin to take that nervous system from that sympathetic nervous system back into the parasympathetic nervous system.
It's so helpful. And it's good to know what's your need for the practice. And I think it's important, like you said, the slowing the breath. Like if you're having anxiety, it's so key to do that. I like doing box breathing. I know I recently did a practice, or it was with a group of us, and it was facilitated, and we were laying down, and I think it was about 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes, and we were doing more rapid breath.
Yeah.
I didn't like it. It wasn't for or my experience. Let me rephrase that. It's not that I didn't like it. I just noticed I find more, at least I think I need to start, do it a little bit more to experience it. But my first experience from this time, I just said to myself, I prefer the slow breath. It really serves me. And for me, it works. And maybe it was hard for me to continue in that rapid breath. And I'm sure a lot of people experience that. So what would you say for somebody that wants to go to the transformation, but yet they're just starting? I know you said start with just a few minutes, but what else would you suggest if they're not really digging it at first?
Yeah. It's so funny. Like when I am at a party or a networking event or something, and, people ask that classic question, like, so what do you do? And I tell them that I run a breathwork company. It's so funny. It's either like, I love breathwork or I hate breathwork.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? But I think it's as every practice, when you start something new, it's uncomfortable.
For sure. Yeah, it's funny actually. The CMO of Pause Breathwork, her first time doing breathwork, she absolutely hated it because the facilitator she had went way too quick, way too fast. Intensity does not equal transformation when it comes to breathwork, and a lot of people think it does. We don't need to do those massive, cathartic, screaming, crying, intense breathworks for us to have an experience. In fact, for certain energy systems, sounds like for you, the more gentle, slow ones are actually going to bring you a deeper level of transformation because that's what's congruent and aligned for your body versus someone who has like more fire. Maybe that's what they need in order to achieve whatever they want to achieve. So it really comes down to knowing our body. And at Pause Breathwork, everything that we do is trauma informed, number one, and like self-consent based. Just because I'm facilitating a session and I'm going at a certain rate doesn't mean you need to follow my pacing. And that's what I say constantly to my clients is like, best. I'm just your guide. I'm a facilitator. I'm going to teach you the mechanics of the breath. I'm going to hold the space for you. But if my breath is too quick and you want to slow it right down or you want to stop, be my guest. Do that at any point in time because your body knows way better than mine. So sometimes I get like, oh, when I see these breathwork classes of teachers just screaming at people like, let's go, let's keep breathing. It's actually like not that great. And we can push people outside of their zone of tolerance where they're like, I hate breathwork. I never want to do that again. When really, if it was done well in a trauma informed way and those facilitators were trained properly on how to really keep the nervous system in a healthy place, that person probably would have loved breathwork. So it's just, just like anything in any industry, there's amazing doctors and there's crappy doctors. There's amazing breathwork facilitators and then there's crappy breathwork facilitators. And it really comes down to the training of the individual.
Yeah, no, that's so useful. So giving people the permission to really understand, or get in tune with your body, what feels right.
You got it, girl.
But I think also it's because I think a lot of people, and this goes with even a yoga practice, like some people, if they're used to being like do on the move, it's very hard to really surrender to the practice.
Yeah.
And so I think sometimes maybe it's like, even though you want to stop, continuing, even though it might be uncomfortable, would be something useful as well, right?
So I always say it's the same way with like physical, like pushing our body physically and pushing our body from a nervous system point of view. And I always use the 10% rule. When I'm at the gym, I'm going to push 10% past what I think I can do. Like this morning, I'm like, lifting weights with my personal trainer. And I'm like, I'm done. My brain's like, we're done. But then I really tune into my body. I'm like, no, there's like 10% more. And it's that 10% that allows for the growth. The same thing with emotional growth and spiritual growth is like, we want to be able to strengthen our nervous systems, but we don't want to fry our nervous systems, right? We want to be able to strengthen our bicep, but we don't want to fry our bicep. And so that's sort of like the nuance and the difference there.
I love it. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people listening probably have heard the term our body keeps score. And this is where the transformation comes in. I think this is very revolutionary when we've learned this concept, because somatic healing has really come out. I don't know. I feel like it came out like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Maybe. Because I remember when I was just starting the podcast, it seemed like it was being talked about then, and people learning and throwing that concept, the body keeps score.
Yeah.
So what really happens in transformation? Because people have seen like people doing breath work and they're crying and they're like, hysterical and things like that. And that can happen, I know, right? But what is happening in the form of transformation?
Yeah, great question. So from when we are in the womb to about 7 years old is when we are most malleable and when our belief systems are kind of forming. Our systems are so sensitive during that time because we haven't developed the discernment and the awareness to discern like this is true or this is not true. So we're kind of just like sponges. And those are our formative years, right? And so a lot of unnecessary and unconscious trauma is being created. Something as simple as, we're babies and we're in our cribs and we're crying and we see our mom walk out of the room. Well, she might be walking out of the room to get us more milk. We don't know that. But to our systems, it's like, she's gone and she's never coming back. And so what that does is it creates a micro trauma in the system. It creates stuck energy in the system. Now, what breath work does is it allows us to bypass the protectors in the mind and begin to actually process, release, and heal the energy that has been stuck in our body. We can't think about feeling better. We have to feel better. And so this is why a lot of mindset work can be limiting. I always say it's the 80-20 rule. 20% is mindset work when it comes to transformation, and the 80% we got to get into the body and actually heal the stuff, or else we just are on the personal development roller coaster if we do mindset coaching and then we go back to where we've always been, because the body will always override what the mind is saying constantly, because the body keeps the score, like you said. So it's essential for us to actually do some sort, like if breathwork's not your thing, do some sort of somatic practice to get into the body, to begin to process and feel through and heal all of those emotions so that we can come back to a place of liberation and alignment. And when we do that, we create spaciousness and alignment in our body so that we're not caught in these old timelines that are from our childhood. And again, mindset coaching is beautiful for the map of like, hey, we're here. We want to start here. Here's the identities that need to shift. Here's what I want my life to look like. Let's use these affirmations. Let's do this behavior change. That stuff's beautiful. But we also have to do the other side of the coin, which is the deep somatic work.
Exactly. And what do you say that, well, like we have the greatest drug, and that's ourselves. Like everything we need to heal ourselves is within. But I think, as we touched on earlier, is we're so detached from who we are. And so creating that, whatever practice, as you said, embodiment practice or somatic practice, what would be some other recommendations if somebody wasn't sure about breath work and they wanted to try other somatic healing methods?
I love somatic movement, dance. There's a way in which our bodies can communicate through movement and through just like getting into all those places. In yoga sometimes, I don't know if you've experienced this, but there's times in yoga when I'm doing like hip openers and I'm in, what's that pose called? What they do at the end? Not crow pose, maybe crow pose.
Oh,
whatever. The one
like the baby one?
pigeon. That's it. I'm like, I know it's an animal of some sort. Okay. The
Pigeon,
pigeon
which one's
pose
pigeon?
where you like take your leg and all the yogis are going to be like, Sam, you're so wrong. But I think it's the one where you take your leg and then one leg's back and then it really like
Oh,
opens up your
yes.
hip. Do you know? I think
Oh,
that's pigeon.
I
Some
love
sort of
pigeon,
bird.
yes.
It's some sort of bird.
No, you're right.
And so whenever I do that pose, I'm like, oh my God, like I'm like crying because there's so much energy. Like women hold so much energy in our hips. Guys hold more energy in like their shoulders, and women hold energy in our hips. So I'll just like cry and release during those poses. So movement is so great for releasing energy. Dance is so great for releasing energy. So if someone's like, "Hey, breathwork's not my thing," amazing, that's totally fine. Do movement, right? Don't. It's like processes that bypass the mind, right? Energy healing is also amazing. If you know an incredible energy healer, a lot of our alumni at Pause, they do our advanced training, which is an energy healing training.
Mhm.
And working with someone to clear and release energy is so powerful. Parts work, really identifying like the parts, like IFS.
I've
Um,
heard that's phenomenal. I've heard,
it's
like, I've interviewed several and they're like, that was the thing that really moved the needle.
EMDR is really good. I mean, and then if you want to go down like the psychedelic route, whatever, choosing your own adventure, that's definitely not for everyone. But things like, psilocybin or ketamine infusion therapy, and obviously you got to do those very responsibly. But those are also ways in which we can really tap into the somatic body without using mindset work.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
So, difference between nose breathing and mouth breathing, because I know that sometimes you breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth, or in through your nose,
hmm
out through your nose. So what
hmm
would be the difference in the use for both?
Yeah. So when you're not doing breath work, breathe through your nose. That's like a general rule, just
Right.
as breath work to thrive is we want to, if you're at your desk or you're in your car or you're sleeping or whatever it is, use your nose. The reason why we want to use our nose is because we have a natural filtration system and we can filter out a lot of toxins. Like that's how our nose is designed. It like filters the air, right? So when you're not doing breath work, do that. Now, the reason why we use our mouth for breath work is because our ability to breathe in energy increases. Like our capacity of breathing in energy through our mouth is just way higher than our nose. And so how often do people do breath work, right? If you're crazy like me, you do it every single day for 20 minutes minimum, but it's a very minimal amount compared to the rest of the time spent. So breathing through your mouth is absolutely beautiful. Now, we don't have to breathe through our mouth using breath work. There's basically like 3 different gears of breath work, if you will. So gear number 1 is breathing in and out through the nose. Gear number 2 is breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth. Gear number 3 is breathing in through the mouth, out through the mouth. And then gear number 4 is like a double breath in through the mouth and out. So depending on where you want to go with your breath work, again, those later gears like 3 and 4 are if you want to add more energy and intensity. If you want just relaxation, the first 2 work really well.
Oh, so helpful.
Yeah.
So we know that stress is everywhere around us. Our world is just
What are
a
you
ball
talking
of,
about? This world is so calm and regulated.
yeah, there's a lot of stress around us. We obviously
Mm.
can't necessarily manage all the stress around us, but we can manage how we feel in our everyday by calming our nervous system. And this is talked about a lot because the importance of it. Stress leads to
Yeah.
disease, to leaky gut, all a
All the
host of
things.
issues, right? All the
All the
things.
things.
I really think stress is just the number one of everything, every
Yeah.
disease. But calming your nervous system, I would love to hear what you could say about this. Is there other things that you recommend in combination with breath work, and how could we use this in our everyday
Mm-hmm.
to serve us in calming, especially our nervous system? Because there's the, as you talked about, the transformational breath, and then there's the relaxation for anxiety, stress.
Yeah. Yeah. So the nervous system is so important. You know, it's like oftentimes we override and we bypass the intelligence that the nervous system has. The feeling of anxiety is intelligence trying to speak to us to let us know that something's out of alignment, right? And so oftentimes ignore it, or we push through it, or we work harder, or we sedate, or we have a glass of wine. It's like, let's just use that energy as fuel, intelligence, right? Like when I feel anxious, I did this the other day. I was feeling anxious the other day, and I just like took this, literally this journal that I'm holding, and I just wrote down everything in my life that feels a little bit like, oh, it's not quite aligned. Because anxiety for me is like something's not in alignment. And I wrote down like, what are the conversations that I need to have that I'm avoiding? And I wrote that down. And even if they were little things um, like the other day, my mom was here and our wedding's coming up and she's so excited, obviously. But like, she was asking me so many questions about the wedding and my brain was like fried. I'm like, Mom, I can't. And I was like, but I was just answering and like I was feeling annoyed at every single question. So I just said to her, I'm like, Mom, can we cut down the wedding questions by like 50%? That would feel really like little things like that, right? I'm like, oh, this is making me annoyed, but I haven't said it. So it's just like I sort of scan my life and I'm like, what's out of alignment? And it could be like, I need to have this courageous conversation. I need to fire this person. I need our company to stop doing this initiative. I need to, maybe I didn't work out enough that week, right? For me, it's like I need to work out every single day or else I get a little bit wonky. And if I miss a day, it's like, okay, that's out of alignment. So I just write down like, what are all the things that need a little bit of a tweak in my life? And then I just attack it. I'm like, okay, have that conversation, do this thing, get to the gym. So anyways, I'm going a little bit off of your question. Let me get back to it.
Great.
So then when it comes to like the nervous system, it's like having this idea of, because I firmly believe it's like we can't get to where we want to go unless we know exactly where we want to go, right? So it's like for me, I have this very clear place of how I desire my nervous system to feel on a daily basis. And it's rested, it's regulated, it's clear. Like there's no gripping. It's just calm. It's like this feeling of, I have it in my shower notes. It says every single day I show up calm and excited. And that's the place that I want to be. It's like completely calm, but like excited.
Love that.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And so when I'm not there, I ask myself, okay, I do this little dump of my list. And then I go, what is the somatic practice that I need right now in this moment in order to get to a place of being calm and excited?
Wow, that's great.
And it could be something as simple as like a 3-minute triactive breath with a top hold and a release. And then I'm like, okay, I'm good to go now. But really allowing yourself to use your nervous system as an indicator of your quality of life. Like the quality of your nervous system is like, that is the quality of your life, because that's how we view it. If you're always jacked up and anxious, life is going to feel jacked up and anxious. If your nervous system is calm and excited, life is going to feel calming and exciting. So how can we use our nervous system as an indication of when it's activated, there's something that we need to realign, and it doesn't need to be suppressed or shoved away or overworked, or we don't need to overeat or anything. Just make some decisions to get back into alignment.
So good. Such a great tangible practice that somebody could do is really asking themselves that and journaling. I love that because I'm all about alignment. I think that is really the key to finding joy is aligning with what feels right to you.
Yeah.
And so I love, we touched on earlier and offline about this shift from the masculine to the feminine. And since I'm talking to a very successful entrepreneur, when I met you, I think you've had your business for like 10 years.
Oh my gosh. I started it. So you and I met in 2019. I started Pause in technically 2017, but 2018 is when like the formation. So since 2018. Yeah.
Wow. And it's wildly successful. You have trained so many people to become breathwork facilitators. And also you have your Pause app, which people could do it on their own. Really, really amazing what you've created. And I'm curious from when you started, which, I understand when people are starting something, they need to go all in. They have to put a lot of energy into like birthing this new baby, and that's expected. But I think as I released an episode recently on the podcast, we talked about burnout. And I think a lot of women entrepreneurs are experiencing a lot of burnout. And I think it's because we're operating in this masculine energy more than we should per se. And we need to be able to shift to the feminine energy, in essence of who we truly are. And so I'm just curious, from then to now, what have you changed and what is your advice for women entrepreneurs out there?
So I have this acronym for business, which is LIFE, and it stands for lucrative, impactful, fun, and easy. And I ended up creating a whole mastermind based on this concept because I was seeing the same thing as you. I was like, there are so many women that are burnt out. Previous to 2018, I ran Hungry for Happiness from 2013 to 2017. And that company was wildly successful as well. It was a 7-figure company, super profitable, but I shut it down overnight because I was so misaligned. Number one, I couldn't talk about emotional eating anymore. But number two, I was operating in my masculine. I was operating from this place of force and hustle. And I'm like, I'm going to burn out so quickly. And so when pause came into my awareness, I was like, I will only do this if I can do it in my own way and I can do it prioritizing energy over strategy. And I know in my bones, that is how everything is created. It's not created through force and hustle and us thinking our way through. It's created through alignment and discernment and intuition. And so it's been a beautiful journey running pause. And it's just like the nature of it is like we're teaching breathwork, we're teaching people coming back into their body. So if I was running it from, a stressed out state that was like in scarcity and fear all the time, it would be fundamentally out of alignment with what I teach. And I'm not perfect. There's days where I do feel really stressed and really anxious. And then I'm like, okay, I'm out of alignment. I got to get back to my power. I got to get back to this feminine energy, this creative energy, because I know when I'm in that energy, everything just works. Like I can't even explain it. It's just like the team is aligned, things are happening, sales are coming in, things feel profitable. And then as soon as I get out of alignment with that, everything just feels crunchy and frustrating. So my work is realizing that the best work that I can possibly do for the organization is not the work that I'm doing in front of my computer. It's the work that I'm doing behind the scenes energetically, lining up my energy, setting the vision, moving through all of the parts of me that feel unworthy and all these sorts of things so that I can show up as the best possible leader. And that's fundamentally what I teach in my life mastermind is how can we do the missions that are on our hearts, but with way less energetic output and way more energy richness. And then it just becomes super fun. It becomes super, super fun because women are here to create and innovate and collaborate and connect. And we have this enormous capacity to do that, but we've been taught to do it in the masculine way. Like I see Eric work, my fiance, and I'm like, if I worked like that, it would last me 2 weeks. Whereas like I love working in the way that is more aligned with my energy system, which is in seasons and cycles. And every single week I'm at a different phase of my menstrual cycle. Like what is possible during my like week 1 is like that's not possible in other weeks. It's just like I have to be mindful of like the natural wisdom, intelligence of the feminine body and just honoring that as I'm building this company.
So key. And I think, what you're teaching women today in your mastermind, I think is so important. And I think many women are seeking that because, kind of everything we're talking about today is coming back to alignment with self, right? Yeah. Or coming home to self, however you like to word it. But I think this is a key element for especially women. Doesn't mean that obviously men need it as well. Mm-hmm. But I was going to ask you, what was I going to ask you? Oh yeah. Because you mentioned seasons. And so I would love to talk about that, the change of seasons and being able to navigate that and release the pressure of what is really going on that's stressing you out and instead surrender to what you feel most aligned with. So I would love, besides doing a breathwork practice, what would you say to allow the change of seasons to happen and instead surrender to them? What would be another thing? I mean, you've talked about so many tangible things we could do, but anything you could add to that?
Yeah, great question. So it's so interesting. I was laughing with some friends the other night. We were at dinner because this year, 2024, has been the hardest year of business for me from a CEO point of view, just like the decisions that I've had to make, the strategic moves I've had to make. The company is just growing and it's at a level that I'm like, I don't know. I haven't done this before. And it's, and I was laughing with some friends before and they're like, how's business going? And I was like, I peaked too early. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, it was just so easy for so long. Like 2019, 2020, it was like so easy for so long. And then, then it got real and it grew and I had more team and more systems. And I'm like, oh, dang, it's like, it's amazing. And it's hard. This year's been really hard. I've had to like really double down on my learning and my leadership and my communication and my financial literacy. And like, it's just like, whoa. So, I'm going through a season. It's felt like a long season. I'm like, is this season done yet? But it's been, it's been like 8 months, if I'm honest, 8 months of the intensity and the pressure, I suppose, has been higher than normal. And that's not a bad thing. That's just a season that I'm in. And so where my ego wants to go when the pressure is higher is like going into those old patterns of like, well, I just need to like buckle down and force and hustle. It's like, it actually needs the antidote. I really need to continually hold the vision and trust, like I really lean on God a lot. Like I really have a relationship with God where I'm like, I'm supported. I know like the mission that I'm here to do is changing the world and I'm not going to be dropped. So it's like, even in those times where like it feels scary and it feels like, I don't know how I'm going to get out of this one, there's always grace. Like grace always shows up. That's what I can count on constantly, is like grace always shows up. So in those cycles where it does feel intense, because it does for everyone, business is never just linear, amazing.
Right.
There's always going to be times where it's like, all right, we're going through a season and this is like, this sucks. This is hard. And, my team in those times are just so good. They're like, let's buckle down. Let's hunker down. Like, let's do whatever we need to do in order to get through this season. Like, we've all got each other. Let's do it, So yeah, like that kind of speaks to that. And then the skills that we develop when it's not easy are so valuable. When things are easy and revenue's high and you're so profitable and it's just like, it's fun. It's great. There's not much. There's nothing holding you to the line to really like learn something quickly and evolve. Whereas like when things feel a little bit more contracted and challenging, you got to show up for it in a big way. And that's been my year this year. It's been fun.
I love it. Well, I think as we kind of mentioned about podcasts, because you have your podcast Can't Be Contained, and you rebranded and you paused your podcast for 2 months. And so we talked about this, and as we were exchanging about this conversation, we know that when you pause a podcast, you could potentially lose the algorithm, the listeners, because people move on. I hope you guys are not going to, but anyways, this happens. And so podcasters do need to consider this when they're thinking about pausing. But what you spoke about, which I think is really powerful, and this is what I'm leaning into as well, is releasing that pressure and that understanding that, oh, this is going to happen if I do this, but instead leaning into what is right to do now and why, meaning the mission of why you're doing that. And I think people need to be reminded that sometimes, like, I know I give myself a lot of pressure or I used to, I don't do it anymore. I used to give myself a lot of pressure, the need to post. And I'm like, screw that. I'm like, if I don't feel the flow or whatever it may be, I'm just like, I don't think we should ever pressure ourselves to serve at a capacity we're not really at. And so I think we have to kind of give ourselves grace and release that pressure and the need to do something, but yet allowing the space to and surrender to the time in the season now. So I think, you touched on some of that, and I think it's really powerful to give that permission to everybody listening.
And it's like nature, it's like we are nature. Nature is in seasons and cycles. There's winter. Yeah. Well, winter, people are, hibernating. You're curling up. You're not as social. And we live in a social media world where it's like, post every single day or else the algorithm's going to fuck with you and you're going to be forgotten and no one's going to love you. It's like, that's so intense.
I know.
It's like, just I really believe like energy is more powerful than all of that crap. And if we learn to like really nurture our systems and become as energetically as aligned as possible, that may mean taking 2 or 3 or 4 or a year off your podcast and trusting that when you're ready to come back, your energy is going to be so aligned and so powerful that your content's going to crush and then it's going to be triple as good as it used to be.
Yeah, I think we all need to lean in that and trust that. But really, connect with that energy, like you said, and connect with the reason why we're doing it, and then realign, and
You
then
got it.
go out there
You
powerfully.
got it. You got it, girl. You got it.
So let's talk about your podcast. It can't be contained. I would love to hear a little bit about it. What's the conversations you're having? What's your
Mm.
purpose behind your podcast?
So when I birthed the podcast, it was called Hungry for Happiness, and it had like a very clear narrative and a very clear outcome. Come listen to this podcast. If you struggle with food in your body, I will give you all of the information to release that and your life will change. Well, that's amazing, but I couldn't do that anymore. I was like, I can't talk about food and body anymore. Like it's not working. So then I changed it to the Sam Skelly Show because I was like, I don't know what to call it. Whatever. Fuck it. I'll just call it the Sam Skelly Show. And then after a while, I was like, that's not it. And we need to start talking more about breath work and stuff. So my team like spent 7 months working on this new concept of this new podcast, and bless their souls. Sorry, you guys. So for like months, we were working on like the brand concept and the name and the flow. And like we created this whole concept. It was called the Embodied Life Podcast. It was all about breath work and somatic healing and all the things. I sat down to record the first episode in the studio, and I just started bawling my eyes out. Like I was just like crying. And then my production team's like, you okay? And I'm like, this isn't the show I'm supposed to do. Like it was just one of those moments where I'm like, this is not it. I'm like, this is not it. And I was like, you guys, if you want to launch this Embodied Life podcast, you got to find another host because like I'm not it. They're like, well, who else is going to do it? I'm like, I don't know, but this is not the show that I'm going to do. And they're like, whoa, that's a waste of time. And I'm like, yeah, sorry about that. So then 2 days later, I was out for lunch with my speaking coach, Patrick Combs, and he and I were chatting, and he just looks at me and he goes, hey, how's the launch of the new podcast? I was like, dude, I killed it. And he's like, what do you mean? You've been working on it for so long. I'm like, I know, but it's just like not the show I meant to do. He's like, what do you mean? And I look at him and I'm like, I don't know, Patrick, I just can't be contained. And as soon as I said that, I'm like, oh, that's it.
Love it.
That's it. So the show is really about, the show is for women and men, but it's mostly women who truly want to live lives on their own terms. And I really believe when we do breath work, when we do somatic healing, and we free ourselves from those limitations and those doubts and those fears and all that kind of stuff, we live lives that are not contained and they're aligned with who we really are. And so the show is really all about, it's all spiritual development, personal development, all of that, but it's truly about how can we give ourselves full permission to live how we're meant to live and not be contained by anything other than like what we want, So
good. And
it's been fun.
I love your branding. It's phenomenal. I love the
Thank you.
energy. Like you could feel the energy. So
Thank
of course,
you.
everything
Thank
will be
you.
in the show notes. Please go check it out.
Mm.
I remember hitting you up. I'm like, cause I was rebranding my podcast.
Yeah.
I'm like, who did that? Because it looks phenomenal.
Did you use her?
No, I didn't. But I thought, I was really,
Yeah.
there was an energy behind your cover. And I just thought like, that's the look, like that's the vibe I was going.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. She's so rad. She's so rad.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, just to kind of close off, just out of curiosity, what's exciting happening in your life that you want to share? Lots of stuff, I'm sure.
I'm working on an insane project right now. Unfortunately, I'm under NDA right now, so I can't talk about it, but like, oh my God, I'm so excited. So stay tuned. I'll be able to talk about it at the end of September. So that feels really exciting, first and foremost. The second thing I'm really excited about is my wedding happening. I'm super pumped to get married. I'm super excited for the wedding. It's just been a good time. Like we've had so much fun, like creating it. And, my fiance and I are both, we love hosting. We love experiences. He's an Airbnb. And so his whole world is like experiences and hospitality. And so we're just so excited to host all of our favorite people, for 3 days up in our favorite place. So that feels super exciting. Pause is really growing right now in a beautiful way. Our team is just so great. Our products are just world class and our clients are getting the most insane results. And so the mission that we're on, which is making emotional suffering optional, has just like, it's just really like it's energizing. It's like I wake up and I'm like, oh, our company exists to make emotional suffering optional. Like that's freaking awesome.
That's pretty
And
powerful
you know
if
what
you
I
ask
mean? It's like
me.
I was like, I can get out of bed for that. I can get out of bed for that. So
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 good.
that feels really exciting. And I'm just, I'm in the process right now of releasing some of the things, releasing some of my responsibilities of being in the business to really work on the business and work on brand and be with my clients more and just be in the work more. And that feels really amazing after 7 years of being just in the business, growing it to where it is today. So yeah,
Lots
yeah,
of good stuff. That's
yeah.
so amazing. And of course, everything will be in the show notes to learn more about Pause breath work and also her
Mm.
app that you could access at
Yes.
your own leisure and to lean into breath work
Mm,
and start where you're at, meaning like really develop a practice
mm,
and how it could serve you. I
mm,
think breath work needs to be in schools. I know they're starting to do
dude.
yoga in schools and Pilates. I don't know, is
Mhm.
breath work? Have you seen that?
Not yet, but a lot of our alumni are like really big into early childhood education. And so a lot of them are going to start like doing that, which I'm so excited about.
So, so good because it's such a great tool. Like you said, it's our remedy to heal ourselves, really, and
Yeah.
it's free. So,
It's free.
and
It's
it's not a
all,
drug.
it's exact. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You are the drug, baby. You are the
Yeah,
drug.
I love it. Well, Samantha, this has been an honor, but I will
Mm,
ask you the question I ask all my guests. So, if you were to share a piece of wisdom, a life lesson that you've learned along your journey, and you feel you need to shout it out
mm,
to the world, what would that piece of wisdom be and why?
mm, mm. You already know. You already know the answer. You already know what to do. You already know your best next step. The only thing that gets in your way is fear. So, how can you work on your system to release the fear so it just becomes clear so we can make quick decisions that are more aligned with who we are? We hang on to things for too long, I believe. I know I definitely do. And so, when I can just get aligned and it just gets so clear, it's all like I always know the answer. It's just right there. We all do.
Ooh, so, so good and so, so true. I feel all our answers are within. We just really
Mm,
need to take the time and the space to pause and listen to those answers,
yeah.
right?
You
Yeah.
got it, girl. You got it.
Well,
Yeah.
Samantha, it's been an honor. So appreciate you. Thank you for
Aw,
spending time with me.
you got it, babe. Thanks so
Give
much
it.
for having me. It was so nice to see you again.
You too.